Hello, everybody. Welcome back to the channel. It's your boy Phil Risden. Please pardon my lack of shape up and my lack of grooming right now. Usually, I would make myself look a little bit better, but today is a very interesting day. Today is a very serious day because today it looks like they got brother Reggie. That's right, they got brother Reggie Watts. Now, if you guys don't know who Reggie Watts is, Reggie Watts is an elder statesman in the alt comedy scene here in the US. He's one of those people that if you were into comedy, you know who he is. He's one of these people that me, as a comedian, definitely looked up to, even though I wasn't doing exactly the type of stuff that he was doing. Reggie, what made him so different from a lot of the comedians that are famous today is that he was truly unique. He does musical comedy, and musical comedy is not something that I'm very into at all, but he still made it his own. People from all over love this guy. He travels the world performing his comedy, and he's even had some of his music in a couple different comedy productions. For instance, he actually did the theme song for the show Louie. He also did the theme song for Comedy Bang Bang, and he co starred on the live action Comedy Bang Bang on IFC, which, if you haven't watched it as a comedy lover, you are doing yourself a massive disservice. Go check it out right now. One of the most brilliant, surrealist comedy shows you could ever watch in your entire life. Check it out. But now that I'm done glazing Reggie Watts, I hate that word, but I was doing it. Now that I'm done glazing, as the kids would say, it is time to address the real situation. Miss Catherine McCullough is what I believe her name is. This is the woman that Reggie Watts was dating in 2023. And this is the person who has seemingly decided to take her life into her own hands. And now her family and her friends are blaming Reggie Watts for this. We've seen people get in trouble or get canceled for being physically abusive, for SA, even being emotionally abusive. But I feel like never for this, because while people may say that he is manipulative, there's a lot of people talking about his expose on Rolling Stone. They might call him all sorts of names. I will say I don't think he really falls under the typical abuser category. Uh, this is a story that I feel like is more or less about neglect than it is about actually, thoughtfully harming someone. For those of you guys who don't know the story, Reggie Watts, a little bit about him, aside from his accolades, is he's a big druggy guy. For a long time, he kind of gave off that vibe of like the weed smoker, kind of Doug Benson esque type person. But over time, he's kind of gravitated more into this kind of guru esque version of himself. And you kind of see that with a lot of his hairstyles and just his general style that he tries to have. It's a very, very bohemian style. And that is because he uses lots of drugs, as bohemian gurus often do. And anybody who knows him or knows of him knows these things. That being said, a lot of the people that are around him or know him might not be able to handle drugs at the same level that he does. And I think that is essentially the issue. Reggie for a long time was using ketamine. And if you don't know, ketamine is a drug that is a disassociative. So for a long time, people were looking down at ketamine as like sort of a club drug. But recently, it's been seen as helpful for people with PTSD, a lot of military people. And ketamine therapy has actually been quite popular in LA. I guess people are saying that it's all necessarily his fault. And, it's not necessarily only the family and friends of this girl, Catherine McCullough, who are coming at Reggie Watts for this. Apparently, in this Rolling Stone expose, there are multiple people and even past girlfriends who are kind of suggesting the same exact thing, basically saying that Reggie would have tons of drugs and he not only would offer them to you, but he wouldn't be careful in how he administered them to you. Like, for instance, he would think that his dosage is the same as your dosage. So he'd be like, oh, you want, some acid? Here you go. And just give you like two drops, or something. Meanwhile, maybe one drop is all a regular person would need. Um, that being said, I understand that, but I still at the same time don't think you can put all that blame on one person. You know, uh, while I do get that, he is living that druggy lifestyle, and a lot of dudes like that, especially when they're in that bohemian lifestyle. It's like they only want people like that around them. And it's not even drug addicty. It's more like, hey, I'm trying to do these things to reach a certain level of enlightenment, and I want other people who are chasing that enlightenment. And that seems to be kind of what Reggie was getting at. The only problem is that, when people love you, they'll do almost anything to be around you, especially if you're, sorry, that was a mosquito, especially if you're a very magnetic kind of person like Reggie Watts is, who doesn't want to be around that? This funny, weird guy who makes crazy improv music, and he's been on TV, he's on late night, he travels the world, and all you have to do to be as cool as he is do ketamine. So I I understand the appeal, and I understand how someone can be living in that environment and things can go too far too quickly. That being said, I still think the brunt of the decision is on you, you know, uh, because at the end of the day, yes, it's not great for somebody to essentially, be like, hey, I only want people who do drugs, and that's how you get my love. But if you really think about it, isn't that kind of what we're all doing? We all have these different check marks for what we want in partners, and I know that seems sounds a little reductive, but it's true. We all have our check marks in what we want in partners. And for some people that's tons of sex, for some people that's almost no sex at all, or they have to be really smart, or they have to have a great job. And for him, it's you have to do a lot of drugs. And although that might be toxic for one person, that might be great for another, and it's not necessarily his fault that you can't hang. And that sounds very callous, but it's true. And it's like, if you can't hang and you can't do those drugs, and that's the type of person that he wants, well, then you're just not the type of person that he wants. And you're going to have to get over that and kind of understand that in the same way that anybody else who goes through a breakup and has a shortcoming has to. I mean, I can't tell you how many times I've dated girls who I really liked, but yeah, they did do a lot of drugs, and I found their drug usage to be toxic. There's another guy who might have thought it was great, but I found it toxic. You know what I mean? But the only way that I could be with them is if I did all that shit. But I realized I couldn't do all that shit, and I left. And I think there's like a difference, between somebody who's physically abused, and even heavily emotionally abused, who keeps going back and coming back all the time, right? And somebody like this who I think just has more or less just low self-esteem, and you're in the orbit of this person who is just so magnetic that all you want to do is be around them. You're like, yeah, I get that, dude, but fucking leave if you can't handle it, you know? And I don't really understand how now this guy's entire job is like called into jeopardy because this. He's losing festival dates. Recently, Comedy Bang Bang just pulled his theme song off of Comedy Bang Bang, and it's been on there forever, dude. I think it might have been like with Comedy Bang Bang when it first started on the podcast. He's always been a major part of that show, at least just a part of the vibes, even if he's not there. So this is like a big watershed moment for his career, and that's what I find to be just so surprising, because like it's very sad that this woman is gone, but I don't think that he deserves the brunt of this situation, because you're not even, this isn't even a person who died from the drug. Yes, it's his fault that she was doing the ketamine, but at the same time, it's not like she overdosed from ketamine. she just did ketamine all the time after they broke up, and then she committed suicide one day. You know, like that's like if I introduce my girlfriend to weed or like beers or something. You know what I mean? And then she just loves beer after that. I break up with her because she gets when she gets drunk, she just kind of gets annoying, and so I break up with her, whatever, and she just keeps drinking. And then one day she decides to check out. You know, and the alcohol was in her system, but it's not like she died from alcohol poisoning. You know, it's like there is some blame there, I guess you could say, but at the end of the day, the decision is that person's to keep doing that every day. You know, and like at some point there has to be some sort of personal responsibility here, man. I don't know. Like I feel like if I was talking to Reggie Watts, I would just say like and this is why I want to say to anybody who's trying to be like a musician or an artist of any kind, pay attention to who you have in your circle, man. Really pay attention to who you have in the circle. When you are a magnetic person, when you are a person with a tremendous amount of aura, you are very, very attractive to people around you. And there's some people who will literally do anything just to be near you. And nowadays, if somebody does whatever they do in order to be near you, and what they do ends up harming them, it's now kind of your fault. I don't know when this started happening, but it is kind of your fault. Society has now decided that. And I think there's a couple reasons for that. I think number one, you know, now we have social media where everything is a mountain from a molehill. You know what I mean? Like everything's content now. Everybody's making content. Everybody's a talking head. We're all kind of famous. Like, why am I even talking about this? I'm talking about this to get my channel popping because this is an interesting topic, right? So, in normal times, people probably wouldn't have given a shit. But now people need content, so they're pumping shit out. Number two, you know, it's the same thing of everybody feeling like a celebrity. I think when like we've gotten to a point now where people aren't in awe of talent anymore. They're resentful of talent, you know, because social media has taught people that you can gain money and be seen as essentially talented for offering literally nothing. And we all deep down know that these people are offering literally nothing, you know, but we still call them talented or still call them important people, right? And so this kind of leads to this general societal psychosis that we seem to have, that whenever you see somebody with actual talent, someone who could actually play the guitar, someone who could actually you know, draw, someone who can actually sing, someone who can actually create a narrative film that is really well received, we get annoyed at it, you know. And the second that any sort of controversy happens with these types of people, everybody runs to pile on to number one, dismiss their talents that we already agreed that they had, and number two, to try and get them out of the way and essentially take their spot. You know, perfect case in point, Louis C.K. You know, another guy who is a comedian in the hot seat. You know, he deserved everything that he got for all that type of stuff. But I do remember when he first got exposed for everything, the what was the first thing you saw? Oh, I didn't even think that motherfucker was funny. Oh, that dude, yeah, he was a legend. Fuck that guy. He's no fucking legend. His comedy sucks. So overrated, you know. And I can even tell you in New York, watching comedians, I was literally seeing comedians steal his jokes openly, and we all knew he was stealing jokes. We all knew they were stealing jokes, but nobody fucking cared because it was basically just like, ah, well, fuck Louis C.K. So you can steal and you can do whatever you want, right? So that's kind of the energy that a lot of these things have. Not to say that, you know, certain people aren't justified, that there aren't real bad people, you know, i.e. Diddy and fucking, you know, David, right? That dude's a fucking psychopath. And there's some real awful people out there in the entertainment industry. It is very predatory. There are very awful people. But I do feel that sometimes there are situations just like this where we're ready to destroy some guy's entire fucking career for something that we wouldn't even care about if we actually knew him as a person. You know? Like how many fucking guys do you know that broke up with their girlfriend and then they spiraled, right? It's like, hey, man, I mean, the spiraling isn't great. And I'm sure some of the shit the guy did was not great either. But the spiral is ultimately that person's responsibility. But I don't know. Maybe I'm just bugging over here. Anyway, let me know what you guys think. That's the end of the video. Please make sure to like, share, subscribe. Am I being unfair? Am I being unfair? I think I'm not, but it's possible. It's possible. Anyway, I'll talk to you guys later. Peace.